This video is brought to you by Card Kingdom. Hey friends, it's Tomer and welcome back to Budget Commander. Today I'm sharing with you a redesigned version of one of my oldest decks, Pinball Karona, a deck I first developed 7 years ago. The entire deck concept was built around a unique old school legendary commander, Karona False God. Even after decades of power creep, Karona is still a powerhouse of a commander, coming out of the gate swinging as a hasty 5/5 avatar with a pseudo overrun attack trigger that can either pump up Karona into an 8/8 attacker or pump up a bunch of creatures that share a creature type for even more damage. After smashing your opponent's faces on your turn, Karona gets handed off to each of your opponents, where she will continue to dish out disgusting amounts of combat damage. Assuming a typical 4-player game of Commander, with just Karona herself attacking on each player's combat as an 8/8, you're dishing out a whopping 32 Commander damage per turn cycle. That's an insane amount of damage, but there's a teeny tiny catch. Your opponents can, and most likely will, agree to team up and use Karona to attack and kill you if possible. Dying to our own commander would be rather embarrassing, so we'll be running cards to prevent that from happening. The original Pinball Karona list used the Vow cycle to stop Karona from turning on us. These junk cards from the original commander precons that nobody played with ended up being key cards in the deck, as suiting up Karona with any of these ensured that Karona could never be used to attack us. Plus, they beefed her up so she was less likely to die to blockers. These cards were alright for their time, but this year we got a massive upgrade to the Vow cycle with its spiritual successor, the Impetus cycle. You know the Impetus cycle from Commander 2020? Those 3 cards in each precon that I kept telling you to be your first cuts when making room for upgrades? Yeah, that cycle of worst cards in their respective precons end up being the best cards in our Karona deck. Just like the Vows, suiting up Karona with any of the Impetus cards pumps up our commander and prevents our opponents from attacking us with her. But unlike the Vow cycle, the Impetus cycle forces them to attack with the enchanted creature, even if they might not want to. And as a cherry on top, most of the Impetus cards come with a powerful attack trigger, such as Shiny Impetus generating a treasure token each time the enchanted creature attacks. Since Karona can attack 4 times per turn cycle in a 4-player game, we get 4 treasure tokens per turn cycle, 4 times the amount we'd usually get. And this, friends, is Pinball Karona. Our deck's primary game plan is to set our commander loose on the table, letting her bounce around, bashing in all our opponent's faces for incredible amounts of damage while preventing her from ever being used against us. My previous versions of Pinball Karona were Enchantress decks. This time, however, I'm rebuilding Pinball Karona as a political combat deck. The goal here will be to manipulate our opponents to kill each other through combat damage while we remain untouched. Basically, we're forcing our opponents to do the dirty work of winning the game for us while we get to relax on the sidelines sipping a mojito. If that's not an ideal deck goal, then I don't know what is. Our deck's goal can be split into 2 categories. The first is combat incentives, cards that encourage our opponents to attack each other either by forcing them to attack like Bloodthirsty Blade, or rewarding them for doing so like Curse of Verbosity. The second are Beatdown ammunition cards. Cards that give our opponents creatures to attack each other with, such as Xantcha, Sleeper Agent, and Tongarth, First Mate. The majority of our cards will fit either of these categories, so let's go into a bit more detail on each of them. First, we have cards that encourage our opponents to attack each other. There are a bunch of ways we can accomplish this, and a mix of all of them will yield the best results. First are combat rewards. If our opponents hit each other for our amusement, then they get a treat, such as ramping with Curse of Opulence, drawing cards with Curse of Verbosity or Edric Spymaster of Trest, or giving them a damage boost with Kahiji Honored One. The second way is forced combat. Our opponents might be shy about killing each other, so we'll give them a little nudge in the correct direction. We can remove the option of blocking with Bedlam, or force them to attack with Famiko the Lowblood. Even better, we can force them to attack our opponents with goad cards like Marisi, Breaker of the Coil, and Disrupt Decorum. The last option are Pillowfort cards, which I consider the worst of the three options. These are cards that only prevent our opponents from attacking us, but don't encourage them to attack each other, like Ghostly Prison. However, a few of these cards can be very useful to our strategy, such as Orzhov Advocist and Thematic Compass. Now that our opponents are primed and ready to kill each other, we'll provide them with additional creatures to attack each other with. Since these creatures aren't coming at us, they're essentially extra damage against our opponents. Our commander, Karona False God, is our best creature that we'll be gifting to our opponents, but there are other similar cards like Tongrath First Mate and Zansha Sleeper Agent, which attack on your opponent's side of the battlefield, or Varchild Betrayer of Kjeldor, which gives your opponents tokens that can't block or attack you. And finally, if our opponents still aren't killing themselves at the pace that we'd like, we can speed up the process by killing them ourselves with cards like Insurrection and Mob Rule. Now that we've covered the deck's core strategy, let's go over the sample deck list. The $50 list shows off the primary goal of the deck, which is to cast Karona, suit her up with any of her Impetus cards, and let her loose on our opponents. Even if we aren't suiting up Karona, we can enchant any of our opponent's scary threats with an Impetus to have that creature work for us. We're also giving our opponents other threats to kill themselves with, like Rite of the Raging Storm and Tongarth First Mate. Plus, we have plenty of rewards and forced combat for them to do our dirty work. The 100 list further expands our political combat theme, giving the table zombies as a reward for killing the victim of Curse of Disturbance, and handing them powerful beaters like Zansha Sleeper Agent. Our mana base gets much better with the inclusion of the 3 forest triomes like Inditha Triome, which we can fetch with ramp cards like Farseek and Wood Elves. The $200 list has basically all the political combat cards I'd want to run in the deck. This tight, focused list will force our opponents to kill themselves for our amusement, or else we'll show them how it's supposed to be done with a timely insurrection. Our mana base got a lot better too, with the inclusion of staples like Arcane Signet, Sol Ring, and City of Brass. And that's it for Pinball Karona. As always, if you like this deck and are interested in a more in-depth guide that covers hundreds of card options, then check out the accompanying article linked in the video description below. Thanks for watching, and until next time, friends, see ya! Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up with the latest and greatest, click on the subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to check out similar videos, click on the links here and here.